Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put in our trip lever. Is to use a punch and move the sear out of the way, because when we go to put in the lever, the roller wants to get in the way. And it simply just drops in place on the hole here. Obviously fits right on there, just like on the regular full auto pack. Take the tension off, and there's, of course I popped it out because I was trying to show you how it works. You can also just fight and put it in there manually without using a punch. You just pull on it so that where's my little, you pull on it so the roller's out of the way. Make sure it's all the way in. The next thing we'll put in is the shifter rod. And that hook, this goes down here, that hook ends up hooking around that pin that is in the trigger. It just drops right in place and just sits right there. The next part is fun, because next we get to put the counting wheel back in. And that old saying that HK hates us, that's probably why they designed it the way they did, because they want it to be a pain to work on. When you're putting this in, the teeth go on the right side of the trigger pack and start with this pin that sticks out that the compression rod fits on. Make sure you have that facing up, because you can get this in other ways, and it's a bear to get it back out. So start with that up. And once you have it in the frame, now we have to rotate it down. And that's the fun part. Because you see it wants to bind up and hit everything on its way. But if you work at it, eventually it gets in there. We're not there yet. It looks like it's in, but it is not. And I successfully jammed it in there. Let's try this again. And I did it that time. See, sometimes it can be a pain and sometimes it's not. Okay, the next thing we're going to put on is the compression rod, which hooks right here onto that pin that's sticking out. And the compression rod spring, you need to have it rotated forward to get it to go on, and then once it's rotated forward and on, now you gotta push it back, and you gotta kind of get it catty-cornered because the other end has to go through the opening here on the shifter rod. Once you've gotten it through, you need to rotate it back. See, and it's going to want to pop off because there's nothing holding it there. If it's short enough to get in, it's short enough to pop off. So the trick is to get it lined up, get the shifter rod in there, or the compression rod in the shifter rod. And once it's in there, get the counting wheel brought back around. Which is not as easy as it sounds. I could do this in one take and make it look like I didn't mess it up, but I'll be honest, sometimes it's just a pain to fight with it. See, now it's through. Now I don't want it to fall off. So we need to get this forward. And you want to hook the... It's hard to see, there's no light in there. You need to hook the counting wheel onto that stud that is sticking out of the housing itself. So now the next thing to do is to get the hammer back in, but this little booger is going to want to pop off every 3 seconds, and one of the ways I've found to combat that is to literally slide a paper clip over it to keep it from moving. And also, when we put in the hammer, if you remember, there's that giant hole in there that the eccentric cam fits into. Now you can't drop the hammer directly in there because it's not wide enough. It just won't fit. So the trick to doing it is, you need, once you've got this held in place, you can hook the shifter rod itself and lift it up. And as you lift it up, you can hopefully get it clear enough that you can then put in the hammer. And this is really difficult to do and film it at the same time. Now, we'll go ahead and hook our shifter rod, bring it up high enough that we have clearance. Don't forget to get the hammer strut through the hole. See, by having that up high enough, we're able to get that lined up and simply push it down, get the hole line up for your hammer pin. And if you heard that click just now, that was that compression rod falling off of that strut, falling off and the counting wheel falling off of that little stud on the pack. There we go, now it's lined up. And if that thing falls apart while you're trying to fight with that, it's not fun. And that's why we stuck a paper clip on there. But at least now it should be a lot easier to grab that and hook it back on there. There. Now that that's on there, we can put our hammer spring back on. And this is the retainer, which, as you can see, it's smaller on one side. That is the side that faces toward the rear of the pack. Now, when I compress this, if you lose grip on however you're compressing this, it's gonna want to go flying. So make sure you keep that in mind. I'm gonna use that piece of a pencil again, get it started. But then, once I've gotten it compressed, I'll just go ahead and put the tip of that flathead in there. And as long as I hold on to that, it's not going anywhere. And now I can put in, you can see inside there, it's being held back. It's in between the spring coils, resting on the rod, so on the hammer strut, so it's not going to go anywhere. Make sure you hold it level so that we don't drop the piece. It should just drop right in place, which it has. Keep this covered and just pull this screwdriver out, and as you can see, it's almost in there. It's not going to go flying on us, but you can keep it covered if you want, just to be safe. Get in there with a pick tool, and that's it. If you want it nice and lined up pretty, you can just rotate it. Make sure it's working. Go ahead and put our ejector back in. Our ejector spring and our ejector. Drop it into the housing. Once you have your pack inserted into your housing, take the longer side. Remember, it's not quite straight down, just a little bit past, and you'll see that there's a gap here. It doesn't quite want to fit, and again, that's where you press that lever down. You press that lever, it drops right in place. Put your other side on. Once they're both fully on, simply rotate it counterclockwise. Once you hit that position, it's back to normal, and it is completely reassembled. You function check it. Function check it and put it on safe. Hammer back. It shouldn't work, and it doesn't. Semi-auto. Functions. Keep that trigger pulled. That's how it should work. 3-round burst. Oh, make sure you reset your trip lever. So 1, 2, 3, full auto, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Functions perfect. And that's all there is to it. It's really not that bad. There's just some things that are a little bit of a pain in the butt. The more you play with it, the more you practice it, it gets a little bit easier.